welcome everybody to this new event around choreographic thinking for service design with our lovely, brilliant guest, Katrin Kolo. Today, the goal is to discover the art and practice of choreographic thinking for service design with organizational choreographer and creative strategist, Katrin Kolo. But who is Katrin? Katrin is a senior professional with 20 plus years of C-level experience in the field of consulting, organizational and strategic management, as well as artistic direction and co-creation. It's really my pleasure to have here on stage someone who is used to the stage and who will be able to teach us a lot. Again, a big thank you to you, Katrin, for joining us. And officially, the stage is now yours.
Thank you, Daniele. Thank you for the invitation and thank you all for taking this time. I will just give you a first definition of choreographic thinking. If you just go one slide further. What is choreographic thinking? It is many things. I tried to wrap it in two phrases. Choreographic thinking is an approach. It's an experiential approach to access the thinking capacity and the knowledge of the entire body. So not only our brain can think, and our whole body thinks and knows. And with this approach, or with this method, we can train our non-cognitive human skills. So they're really human. And therefore, this approach is human-centered, it is highly exclusive, and it is movement-based. Where does this come from, Daniele? I'm not the youngest, so you can see that from the time frame I started my dance studies when I was 4 years old. So since then, that's 50 years, I've been developing this approach, I would say, and it's all captured in my body. I've started with dance studies, then later on economic studies. Then I started my dancer and choreographer career at Bavarian State Opera in Munich, while I was still studying economics and while I was then later on working as a management consultant. During that time, I realized, together in a discussion with a client, with a management client, that so I tried to find out what's that. And I didn't immediately find out, but later on. And then I continued after the consulting. I went into the direction of artistic institutions and got some leadership experience. And then later on, I tried to wrap all of this into my transdisciplinary studies. And what happened during COVID was that I finished my artistic direction career and I started something completely new, but at the same time, I went back to my beginnings. I started a new sport, which is called pump foiling. And it's a highly physical training, but it is also highly mental training. And through that training, I experienced anew how the mental and the body experience exchange and develop each other. From that, I decided to start a freelance career. That was last year, actually, and that's how I met Daniele. And I wanted to pick up all these experience from the past 50 years in a way and put it together. And just a couple of weeks ago, I became vice world champion in pump foiling. So that is also an end, I would say, in this career. But so if you click, so I started with choreographic thinking or working with it, somewhere in between my management consulting career and then my leadership career in the artistic institutions. And it started off, if you go over, by transition coaching for dance artists, because I saw that dance artists needed new careers after their dance careers to earn money and to earn a living. And I could see their potentials, how they could use it in other fields than the arts. Then let's go further. Then I was a leader myself and I used my experience from the dance and choreographic training in my leadership. And I made from that, I made a leadership performance training for leaders to use things we use on stage and we are trained for. And that is, for example, on stage, there's always going something wrong, but we cannot talk to each other and find a solution. we have to find a solution in the fraction of a second without talking. And we do that because the audience always gets high quality on stage. You don't see the mistakes, we do, and the things that go wrong. And when the orchestra misses a couple of bars, that happened to me. We had to just switch all of the things and it happened and we finished the performance. This is a special kind of leadership. It's an organic leadership. It's a dynamic leadership. And we are trained in that. And I made a training out of that for non-artistic leaders. So you can go on, Daniele. From these two experiences I did before, I started to go a bit more into artistic research and try to model an ideal organization where everyone feels free in a safe space and can move and develop its own potential, and all this potential of all the wonderful people in one organization get together and let the organization bloom. And so that was meant to be an artistic project, which was followed by another artistic project, which was around the influence of opera into the everyday life of people and the influence of everyday life of people into opera. And then, okay, so that took a while until then I wrapped it all up. And with my experience from the pump foiling sport, and I digged a bit deeper and I felt, okay, let's wrap it up. All my projects I've done over the life, and let's crystallize this method I always use. And I gave it the name choreographic thinking. So the name was born last year, but the method was born 50 years ago, I would say, even if I didn't know it. And after 25 years, when I talked to my customer in management consulting, he said, listen, Katrin, you have something which is valuable, but you are too early. So now, 25 years later, I think I'm at the right time, because we're in the era of artificial intelligence. So we don't need so much brain work anymore. We need our human capacities that are locked in our bodies, that are not only in our brain. We can give the brain work to the AI, and we can now concentrate on the experiential knowledge of our bodies, of the performative knowledge and of the performative thinking, which I call choreographic thinking. And this is related then to service design. I would understand service design as the design of experiences. So if we design experiences, we should know about experiences, and we should know how to design experiences. And choreographic thinking is, in a way, the knowledge of designing experiences. So I've been talking already a lot. Let's have a look what this could look like, a choreographic thinking workshop. I will comment it a little bit. So these are people that don't know each other. They came into this room about half an hour before they started this. They got only one task from me, and they immediately started to perform. The whole performance goes about 10 minutes. And in the beginning, they started all together without me telling them to start. They started by themselves. And after 10 minutes, they stopped by themselves without anyone telling them that they should come to an end. They just felt it. We can switch a bit further. You see, there is a rather static moment, and then happens a little solo, which finds a follower that repeats the solo in a different variation, and they go out, and it still doesn't stop. And you see the lady in the front, she keeps the performance going. And then when we switch to 5:45, the lady is now in the right back, and see what happens now. It's all in silence. People didn't speak to each other. You see here, this is a very interesting pattern that I see often in the workshops, how someone just all of a sudden gets in a leading position and people follow the person. There is clear she was the leader, so they didn't just follow her, they really follow her through action as well. Can we have a short moment of that, if you want to ask a question or if you want to leave a comment? Just a very short moment. Manuel?
Thank you. Right from the start, it's very inspiring. And I like that notion of you're really working on the experiential skills of the body. And to me, it refers to a methodology, which is the animal part of human beings. And it's very interesting what you said, that at some point, they will, when they're connected, they will stop at the right moment together. So I've seen that, and I find it very interesting because I'm curious to hear about the next part of your talk, but you're really working on that notion that has been denigrated for so long because the brain was important, that we're animals, in fact. And there's a lot of potential in being connected just through the body. So I'm really curious to hear about the rest of the...
Thank you. Yeah, that's what comes after the information age, after the artificial intelligence age. I think it's maybe the social age. And because if we don't get social, I don't think we will survive truly social. But this is my opinion, my personal opinion. I got a message here in the chat, what we're trying to determine by doing this exercise, perhaps finding the best pathway through a space before you put in the sidewalks or hallways. That could be. Yeah, that could be. Actually, in this case, we didn't define an overall goal. This is very often what I do in these workshops. Everyone has their own question that they want to answer, but they perform together and they get answers from themselves, but also through the performance of the others. So every person can have a different question and they can be so wide away from each other. But this is the thing I often work with. I always work in groups, even so people work on individual questions, tasks, or whatever. They want to find a solution. And in this case, there was no overall task anyway. Maybe, is there another person who wants to ask something? Then I ask you, what do you think was the task I gave them to do? Do you have an idea? Yes.
Like to walk, and at some point each time you cross someone to get your eyes connected and then to continue? Or...
No, actually, there is an idea. It seems that the human instinct is more vivid through the body rather than the mind. Yes, the instinct plays a big role in this, the reflex and the impulse, without a thinking. So the body is quicker in behaving than in thinking. And Heidi suggests that I ask them to find their position in space. That is indeed a task I always give at some point in the workshops, but it's usually not the first, because you need some experience to find your space. What does that mean? So the task is very simple. It's important. I give tasks that you don't have to think about. This is in one direction of the room, you go fast, and in the 90-degree direction of it, you go slow. That was it. And it's a very simple task. You don't have to think about it. It's so clear, and it's still up what is slow and what is fast. And it's up to you to turn around. It's up to you to choose the movement. It's up to you whether you want to bump into someone or you want to avoid people. And there is the other rule. You can always decide at any moment whether you want to be observing or participating. And if you want to observe, you can choose the space that you like. What I call these tasks, or the exercises I give, I try to formulate them as enabling restrictions. That's an expression that was defined by Brian Masumi. He wrote, I think, half a book about it. No, I don't know how much, but he used it at first. And enabling restrictions are tasks that you cannot go wrong with, and then you will feel free. So if I would tell the people, 30 people that don't know each other, they are the first time in this space. They don't have an overall task to fulfill because they don't even have any task together. They don't even know each other. And if I would tell them, go ahead and just move wherever you want in the space and do what you want, they would get stuck. They would not move at all, I think. Some would go crazy maybe, but most of them would just nothing would much happen, and people would feel very much uneasy. And so that would be an not enabling task. And so this is choreographic thinking is working with enabling tasks. That's a very big thing. And that's something that also helps creating a safe space. So that's something very important. You saw it, we filmed the observers, the security camera. People were informed that we do that, and they knew from this little camera, you cannot see their faces. So they were sure they're not filmed or zoomed in. They knew this little frame and no one can know who it is. And we did that because otherwise, when you film or take photos, or even only a protocol, a note taker in the room can destroy the safe space. People feel intimidated or cannot go on moving. So these are all aspects of this method. And of course, a lot of time I went wrong. I forgot something, or we did some photos and it destroyed everything. This is really, it's so powerful when you lose the safe space that you lose everything. And it leaves a very bad taste at the end for everyone. So let's go back to the question, do you distinguish between instinct and tacit knowledge? No, I would say not. I would say both of these forms of knowledge are in the body. They're saved in the body. And I don't ask whether you're born with it or whether you have gained it throughout your life. The importance is it's there. And I think most of you know that the brain knowledge, the cognitive knowledge, is actually deleted all the time. 95% of the informations we get have to be deleted, otherwise we have an overload in the brain, and the brain couldn't work anymore. But in the body, we are like trees. It's all inside. It's all these rings. Every year leaves a ring in our body in a way. All the experiences we do throughout the life, and it starts when you're in the womb of your mother. All this is still in our bodies. That also explains a lot of traumas we carry through our whole lives, unfortunately. But it also, in a positive way, we can use that. There is another, as designers, how can we become more physically aware of movement and rhythm, not just watching others move, but actually feeling it ourselves? Do it. There is no other way than do it. That's also a reason when people come to the workshops, sometimes companies ask me to do a workshop. And then, of course, it's even more difficult to create a safe space, because in companies, everyone feels like, oh, I'm observed by my chef or by my team. But we usually achieve that. And I always ask them to decide whether they want to observe or take part. But I make them also, I say it plays a role and they participate, even if they leave the room now, because they have once been there and they will leave an empty space. The presence has been in the beginning, and when they go out, that leaves something. It changes something in the room. And also people coming at a different time. I don't say late, because they're never late. They're always on the right time. They're on their right time. And when people enter the room, it also creates something, a new social construction, a new social choreography. And so you are in it. And even if you don't move, you're part of it and you influence the movement of the others. And when you become aware of that, it becomes so easy to move yourself, because you're part of it anyhow. And I had one participant actually in the performance you just saw. She said, I chose a chair in the middle to observe. And all of a sudden, I got moved. Something inside moved me. And that's exactly what we should, these impulses, to feel them. This is not that we always have them, but we don't feel them anymore. We are trained to not feel them, actually, because we are in a meeting. You sit down, you don't get up. And I just recently did a workshop to do choreographies for everyday life, and especially the meeting situation. We played it. We sat around the table, and I said, now move. When you feel you need to move, just move. We talk about whatever, about the weather and stuff, but then just do a movement. And even if you just do this, or you get up, or you go under the table, or whatever, you sit on the table, do something. And we said, you know, you can also find a context for this movement. If you want to bend down, let just something drop. Then you have a reason to bend down and pick the pen up that you just dropped down. But you can actually move, and you can get out of your uneasiness in the meeting. Or you just go to the toilet if you need to. Easy. Find a context for your movement that you need. But first of it is you have to feel the movement that you need in that moment. And I think the basic of my workshop is really in the beginning to let the people feel what kind of movement the body would like to do. So human-centered, that's clear. The choreographic process, it's a very generic process. We know this process from design thinking or from other creative processes. And from whatever we plan in our life, we do a preparation, then we zoom in, we get warm together, and then we do a little research. And what I call choreography here is the moment where we put the pieces together. We call it also in dance, we call it assembly work, or we even call it composition. But generally, we call it, this is what's called the choreography. And the performance is a kind of it's the end product, but it can be also like a prototype. When we do in a rehearsal, we do a final performance, or we always do regularly. We do a performance and test. And then, of course, there's a reflection, a bigger reflection at the end. So the process doesn't go only from top to down, it goes also from down to up, and it jumps in between, and you can leave out some of the process steps sometimes. It's rather a process box than a really proper process where one field has to come after the other. So the next thing is that, and that's, I think, very special of this method, and we don't use that usually, that we in all other workshops, when we do it together, we don't do non-verbal sections. Non-verbal sections that are not cognitive, where no one thinks about anything, but we just do and move. We get movement exercise, and then we verbalize, we go back into movement exercise, and we verbalize. And all decisions are based on the individual coherence. I call it, coherence is maybe not the right translation, but it's very difficult to find the right word. In German, we say, so when it feels coherent for you, I don't say appropriate, because appropriate is something we learned. It's something you might not even feel easy with, but it feels in the moment the right thing for you to do. And so the decision to finish a performance like we just saw is based on that everyone in the room feels that this performance is finished. Otherwise, it would go on. And it's really the individual, and of course, there is an interplay between the individuals. But it's not an overall, and that's why I say it's not hierarchic. There's no hierarchy in it, and it can change any moment. And one very important aspect, I work with the reflexes or the impulses we had, so that we cancel the brain in a way. We try not to access the brain at all. We try really to access the bodily impulses and not filter them through any brain work. You get through a work that you're not used to do, you get other solutions than through work you're used to do every day. Of course, it changes an organizational culture if you do with your whole company a movement workshop. Communication changes through the shared experience. That can also be when you go mountain climbing with your team. Of course, then communication afterwards is a bit different. It trains the non-cognitive skills. Like we said, it's always a lot of fun. It's always motivating for the people. And what it definitely builds is trust. Because what we know, when people move together in a room, then the hormone dopamine is produced by the body. And this is the trust hormone. This is the hormone that is produced in the babies and the mother when they're breastfeeding. So when you have a meeting and it's a difficult meeting, maybe you just move a bit in the room. Maybe a simple thing is, don't put the chairs yet at the tables. Have the chairs piled up in the corner of the room. And when everyone comes into the room, you welcome them and you say, oh, okay, let's now take our chairs and sit around together. Maybe we don't even want to sit around the desks. Maybe we want to sit around in a different way. And this creates already a movement, and that builds trust between the different partners, which can be a completely different base of starting off a meeting. And of course, the experience of a safe space, a lot of people don't even know what that is, unfortunately, in our world. This is something what we not necessarily learn at home. Not everyone is grown up in a safe space. And throughout my workshops, I realized that how few people actually have had safe spaces at home. And so for some people, it's the first time, especially when it's in their work environment, that they feel safe. They feel they can be however they are, and they're valued for who they are. And it doesn't matter how they behave and what they say. Everything is valuable, and it will not be manipulated, or it will not be abused against them. And this is a very new experiences for a lot of people, and that opens up completely new possibilities. The advantages that I see, there's maybe also disadvantages and also things. It's valuable, and that's my aim always, for the individual and for the group. And that's part of the motivation game. If you just do something for your organization, if a meeting or a workshop is done to make your organization better, it's not so motivating if you have the feeling, oh, it's also something for me, and I can work on my things as well. That gives you a lot, and it motivates you much more to participate and to bring things in. It can reveal, and most of the time it reveals, hidden and unconscious potential of the individual, but also of the group or of the organization. It's an extremely fast process, and it includes the spatial and the dynamic and the interpersonal aspects, which are very often not focused in other workshop methods. It delivers long-lasting experiences because they are saved in the bodies. They are not forgotten anymore. People who participated will carry that throughout their lives and can always access it again. It's non-hierarchical, it's inclusive. You can have completely paralyzed people in a wheelchair in the room, and just by their presence, they contribute, and they contribute to the solutions, to the ideas that are created in the room. And it cannot be substituted by artificial intelligence. So I think if we think about the future of our work, and we have the feeling a lot of our jobs will be gone because they're not necessary anymore by artificial intelligence, I think it's now the time to think about what is our human capacity. And I think it lies in our movement knowledge. It lies in our bodies that have a thinking capacity that computers will never have. And so this is my main point, especially for the momentum, why this method now, I think, even though I used it for almost 25 years, I think now is the momentum to revive it and to bring it out a bit more. What I just wanted to repeat, if you ever do a workshop like that, be very careful with documentation and rely on the documentation that happens in the bodies of the participants. So if you want to use choreographic thinking yourself, it's extremely important. I repeat it a bit too much maybe, but it's really, the safe space is key. What I do is, before I even do the things that I have there, people have a set space and a set time. They know in which space this is happening, and they know how long it will go. So what time it's over. And then in this space, there is always this rule, and I keep on reminding them, act in any moment in such way that feels coherent to you, only to you. You don't have to think what might be good for the group, or what you don't think about the influence you have on the group. Just feel what is for you the right thing in the moment, and feel it. Don't think, feel it, and then act in such a way. And that can mean that you step out and go out of the room. You don't have to tell anyone, and you can come back any moment. You don't have to tell anyone, or you leave forever, or you sit down, or you go in the corner and read a book. You do what is the thing for you to do. I always ask for their expectations and for the limits, and we write them down, and it's binding contract of all people present. What should happen in this time frame, in this space, and what mustn't happen. And sometimes people say, example, this is a very usual example, they say, oh yes, I want to dance. Dance should happen. And then the other ones say, no, not at all. I hate dance, so it mustn't happen that we dance. And I say, okay, both is right. We see what happens. If one person feels like dancing, we let this person dance. And if the others don't want to dance, they don't dance. So everything has its, how do you say, legitimation. But it's important to put that. I forgot it in one workshop, and we couldn't work. We couldn't work. It was the worst workshop I've ever had. So this is, everyone knows where the limits of the others are and what the expectations of the people are. So this helps to create this safe space. And we signed that together. And then what I already explained is these enabling constraints. And one of the first I always give is choose yourself in which position you want to be in the workshop. And you may change this at any moment. So you cannot go wrong with that. This is really a constraint, or it's a task, but you cannot never be wrong. And then very simple exercises, like I told you, go fast in one direction, go slow in the other direction. It's very explicit, and it's an enabling constraint. And I ask the people not to gesture and to grimace, because if you allow that, it becomes a theater play, and the people don't take each other serious, and they start to play roles. They're not themselves anymore, and they are overacting. And when they smile or start giggling or grinning, this is a sign of, we do that. I laugh a lot. This is my nervosity, and I have to get it out somehow. So I smile a bit too much maybe when I talk, but we want to take each other serious, and we want to take ourselves serious. And when we make a serious face, we do that. And people, when I just remind them when they start, and then there is some giggles, I say, please remember yourself, take yourself serious, and please don't giggle or smile too much if you can. And all of a sudden, the atmosphere becomes very dense almost. People start feeling themselves and the others. And when we have done the exercise, very quickly, without any break, immediately start verbalizing. So the verbalizing is not filtered by the brain. And I usually ask things like, what surprised you? Please say each of you one word. And I also say if they go in order, or if one thing I say to include another movement, I say, if you said your word, touch one of the other people who should say the next word. So you pass on the word by a movement in touching someone else. And if you don't want to say anything, or you don't have to say anything, say the word nothing. This is a way of avoiding the silence and sometimes a bit painful moments, because we don't know, does the person not want to say anything? Do they need more time to think? What is it? Why they are silent? And if they can say nothing, they have said something. It's okay. And so these are the inputs I can give you if you want to try something yourself. Just be aware, and this is what we also said in the beginning, is movement is collected, or movement experiences are collected through all the life, and they can sometimes be traumatic or associated with traumatic moments in the life, and some people don't even know about these moments. So that's why the golden rule is so important. And I ask the people, whenever you feel you don't feel well anymore in this room, leave the room without any problem. Because I had once a man in my workshops, and he he realized throughout the workshop, his memories of the military service came back, and he felt completely uneasy. And since that workshop, he told me then later after the workshop, I said, okay, I have to be careful. And I always advise the people, if you feel something strange and strange memories come up in your body, or you feel not good, tell me if you need help, or feel free to leave. It's important. This is something, we are not in a therapeutical setting there, but we have to be careful when things pop out of the body, and to prepare people what to do in such a moment. I think that's very important, and not to be surprised if something like this happens. It doesn't happen often. I think from my side, this was already a lot.
Thank you so much, Katrin. I really appreciate all what you shared. As someone who runs a lot of workshops, there was a lot of learning for me in things that I want to steal right away, which maybe which aren't yet in the choreographic thinking, but maybe are already elements. For example, one thing that I really like in your approach is the level of freedom you give, which we all sometimes lose in workshops, where telling people like, you can be in an observer role and that's okay. You can leave and that's okay. Which I think is quite a beautiful thing to say. If you're here because you want to be here, if you don't want to be here and want to check your emails, that's perfectly fine. Don't make as if you were here, but in your mind, you're like already making your to-do list. That's okay. Leave, have a good time, do something else. And I think that's one thing that I found extremely strong. The other thing is this say nothing, the power of saying the word nothing, to say, I have nothing to say now, but it's by saying it, I still contributed it. And there is the third thing that quite touched me quite strongly is that to think about the skills, the power that we have that can't be copied that easily by other machines. And I think that's quite a strong element in here. And the last thing maybe that I found quite interesting, having especially in the room people who are quite strong in theatrical prototyping, is the moment where you said, when are we in choreographic thinking and when are we playing roles? And I think that's a quite interesting bit because we use a lot in service design the let's put yourself in the role of this person, etc. And this, I feel, is choreographic thinking comes a little bit before that, where we say, let's just be ourselves without playing any role and learn from that. And then maybe later in another process, we can then play roles and learn also through that play. I think that was a very rich, very, very beautiful learning experience for me. As I told you before, I really was excited for this event, and I'm sure for many people too. I see that we have a few questions. Can we do choreographic thinking all alone without the others? Should the others around us not be prepared about our reactions?
I think, yes, I use choreographic thinking all the time. When I need a solution, I think of the first movement metaphor I have for the problem I have. For example, when I'm stuck, it's like I'm stepping on the place. I just get up and I step on the place, and I observe my own body doing that until my body starts doing something different. And either it's lifting the knees higher, or either it's hopping, or either it's moving me somewhere. I start walking in the apartment, or I want to start doing something with my upper arms or whatever. I just observe my body, what it does for a certain time. And then I sit down and translate all the movements my body has produced back onto my problem. And so I use it for myself in a way. And I do it the same way. I give myself a little time frame. Sometimes I set an alarm clock 1 or 2 minutes. So I'm not going forever and it's not going crazy. And sometimes I just say myself, okay, I have to move as long as I need, this kind of, but I frame it for myself before I go. And then I translate it back and say, okay, what did I observe and what kind of movements? Were they fast? Were they slow? Did I need more of the body than the legs, or did it move me in space? What was the spatial component? And what was the story I told myself? So these are all the elements I use to solve own problems as well.
you so much. I think we have still time for a last one, which is the question around how do you see the difference between choreographic thinking and something like body storming?
I don't know exactly what is the framework of body storming. I guess there is a lot of similarities. I would say just from the word. And so if you know what body storming is, and if you have done a body storming workshop, you might tell me what the difference is. And if there is, I don't know, for me, is the translation work is a big work. And it's always also the interplay of the individual and what is created with the group. And when something is created for the group, what is created for the individual. I don't know whether this is also an integral part of body storming, or I think it's integral part of choreographic thinking.
May I suggest something by definition, by reading this body storming link that Peter suggested? It seems to me that what Kolo suggests is more like connecting with our authentic self, with our authentic feelings, while the body storming is about seeing ourselves in a space and defining the space within, defining ourselves within the space in order to create experiences. So the one, I think it focuses more on connecting with your real self. If this could be differentiation, I don't know.
Yeah, thank you so much, Heidi. And indeed, I think there is something quite powerful in that question and in the way you also answered it, Katrin and Heidi, which is this aspect of from many different places, we arrive at some similar places too. If you want to give back to Katrin because she gave a lot to you today, you can do a few things. Connect with her on LinkedIn, suggest ideas for collaboration. I know from Katrin that she's eager also to continue the conversation, and I'm sure that people who are used to workshop facilitation, used to theatrical performances within service design would have a lot of fun working with Katrin. Thank you so much, Katrin, for all what you shared with us. Thank you to all of you who joined us, and I wish you a very beautiful evening. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much again, Katrin, and connect with Katrin.